And the beauty of it is I'm not tied to a record label. Nobody tells me what to do. I just do what I like. That's the end of it.
Well, I think you're a fantastic musician. I want to start. We're actually trying to go live here. I'm trying to get live right now. Facebook is blocking us. So right now we're only live on the radio. I'm trying to get us live so we can go live on Facebook, but it's not letting me. So I might have to I might have to edit a little bit here. Hold me 1 second.
Sure, man. Just gonna grab a glass of water.
Yeah, go do what you gotta do.
I'm sorry. We're not on here yet.
So we're live right now. Hey everybody, I just want to let you know I'll be live with Terry Draper from Klaatu very soon. We're going to be talking about his music with Klaatu, and he was just telling me some unfortunate what's going on. But it's okay. It's okay. I'll get everything working again for
Video. StreamYard or something.
We're on StreamYard, yeah.
Or something.
Or something. It's always software that has issues, you know?
Somebody calling me?
Somebody's calling me, and they keep doing it. But that's okay. I want to talk a little bit about your, how your upbringing. You started out in music. Terry, you were implementing a band of klaatu, but you were also a great musician by yourself. How did you start out in music? What did you do?
I got a very early crash course. I lived with my mom and dad, and I lived with my grandmother, and I shared a room with my Uncle Bill, who was 10 years older than me. And so when I was 5 or 6 years old, I'd come home from school, and he would come home from high school, I guess, at that point. And we would sit in our room and listen to his 78s. So, at the age of 6, I was extremely hip listening to Elvis and Little Richard, the Everly Brothers, and my personal favorite, Roy Orbison. In fact, on my 10th birthday, when I was 10 years old, my uncle came up to the house. We'd moved out then, and gave me the first LP I owned, which was Roy Orbison's Greatest Hits. And I was 10. But I also was listening to the radio a lot and collecting 45. So I had all the Beach Boy records and all the Phil Spector girl group stuff. And I was a big fan of Gene Pitney. I got to see him live in the 80s. That was magnificent. And all the Bobbies. How many Bobbies were there? Rydell, Curtola, Bobby Vinton. There was Bobbies everywhere. and I collected records and listened to them with my friends. And, I was just a wee squirt. And then we all watched the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. And it occurred to me at that moment that I could maybe play music and not just listen to it and collect it. And so I bought some drumsticks. And I wandered around school and the neighborhood, tapping on anything, the telephone pole, my girlfriend, whatever was nearby, and eventually got a drum kit.
Wow, really? So you basically started out with drums, but then you went to other instruments, correct?
Yeah, I remember I went to see Led Zeppelin in the village in Yorkville in Toronto. At the Rock Pile, somebody had told me about this hot new band coming from England. They didn't have a record out yet. The record came out about a week after the show. And it was that night watching them that I decided to quit the band I was in and put the drums aside. And I borrowed an acoustic guitar from a friend and a Beatles songbook. I could read music because I played trombone in high school, and there was little pictures of where to put your fingers on the fretboard to make the chords.
Right.
So I taught myself to play guitar and started writing songs. And then a couple of years later, I bought a piano. And it took me a long time to learn to play the piano because I'd never played it before. But now I play it every day. I haven't played guitar in ages, been years. Like, and I'll pick it up once in a while, but the piano is just you can see everything. You can see all the interweaving of chord structures and stuff. It's just all right there. On the guitar, it's much more difficult to see visually. So the piano is my favorite instrument, and I play it every day, sometimes just for pleasure, but mostly I'm putzing around in the studio working on something or other.
That's awesome. So your music. So when you were in klaatu, your combination of you wrote a lot of songs too in there, didn't you?
Just a couple. John and Dee wrote the body, the most of the songs. They both had grade 8 piano and had been playing piano since they were, forced to as children take lessons. And so I was a late bloomer compared to them two. And they were very fine songwriters, and the competition was quite stiff. But John and I wrote Calling Occupants together. And when we did the last album, I had this song called December Dream. And John,
I love that.
He helped me write the chorus. We wrote the chorus together, and the rest of the song I already had in the bag there. So yeah, but they wrote most of the music.
So now we were talking about that. Are you surprised that there's still people that like your music?
No, not at all. Not at all. We worked with Terry Brown of Rush fame. It was his recording studio that we made the first 2 albums at. Okay. And the first album, we took 3 years to make that record because we used all downtime. When there was nobody, we'd go in at Friday night at 10 o'clock at night and work till dawn. And that's the way the record was made, And then we'd come back the next week after sitting with what we did for a week and say, you know what, that maraca part just isn't right. Well, let's redo it. And so we had that kind of time forced upon us. It wasn't our choice. It's just the way it worked out using downtime. And so we had a great deal of objectivity about the album. And plus we were working with Terry Brown, who was state-of-the-art engineer. And we had all the state-of-the-art equipment. I remember the day he ordered the Eventide digital delay. And it was the first time we'd heard digital, not heard it, but had it. Everybody was using it, like Elton John. Terry Brown used to go out once a month and buy a half a dozen albums from state-of-the-art artists just to hear what they were doing sonically, so he could stay on the, ahead of the curve, if you will. Right. And so that's why those records, one reason why those records sound so good is that we put in a great deal of time. We were very meticulous about what got recorded and what didn't. And we also made the songs, we recorded the music we wanted to hear, not the music we wanted to play. I've told this often, is that we would have one person out in the studio and the rest of us in the control room. And the way it worked out, the people that weren't playing the instrument had more control over the final product because we were listening to what the person out there was playing. John's out there playing the piano, and it's okay, or doing a bass line, and it's, hey John, try this. Now how about we go here and do that? And then he's out there playing. Yeah, okay, let me try that. Oh, that's great. Okay, and so it was built by committee, but the person that wrote the song had veto power.
And I love the creativity of all the songs, you know, in the first album, the second album, and even some of the other albums that was just amazing. When I listen to the song, I look for the structure of the song, I look for the chord structure of the song, the melody, the harmony. You guys were really harmonizing really well. In Some Rosa Some Way, I believe, or California Jam, it actually sounds like the Beach Boys. That was intended, wasn't it?
Absolutely. John wrote that song and California Jam years before. I think we used to play it in a previous band. John and Dee and I had a band in the early 70s called Mud Cow. Don't ask me. And, and there was a fourth member in there.
Right.
And we played some of those klaatu songs in the band. Anus of Uranus we used to play, Dear Christine we used to play, and I think California Jam, but don't quote me. Anyway, John wrote this song and California Jam, and the original title was The Great San Andreas Misfortune of 1983.
Right.
And we thought that when we finally got around to recording and doing that song, we thought that title was a little bloated and and dated too. You don't want to paint yourself into a corner. So we changed it to California Jam, which there was some festivals going on in California called the California Jam at that time in 1974, 75.
Right.
And not only that, but the song itself is a tribute to the 60s psychedelic bands of California. And it's a California Jam. It's an amalgamation of all those bands. So it harkens to the Mamas and the Papas, the Association, the Beach Boys, of course. And we were big fans of that stuff, listening to Good Vibrations and God Only Knows. What a great song that is. And all that stuff. And so John wrote this tribute to those great artists. And we re-recorded it at the height of the disco era.
I talked to Bobby, the drummer for the Beach Boys, and after I believe it was one of the original members and the drummers, Dennis Wilson, the drummer, left the band and wanted to go out front and do some more music. Bobby did the drumming for them, and we were going over a lot of the songs, and he said, it came to his own that Dennis wanted to go on his own and do his own stuff. And we were talking about that and how he began. So the same thing I would tell you is how you got started was after klaatu disbanded, and you're like, all right, I'm still a musician. I still want to play music. What do I want to do? What was your first album like?
What was my first album like?
Like,
well, it was.
Like you're all like frustrated. You're kind of mad because you have all this.
The first album was 15 years later, so I'd gotten over it. And plus, I made a good life for myself. My wife was a school teacher. We have a big home. We've traveled the world, and we still do. We have a place in Florida, Clearwater, where we spend the winters. Unfortunately, not this winter. I had to show the first time in 4 or 5 years. But so not being in a band made all those things happen. The roofing business, although it is very hard and dirty work, is quite lucrative. And my wife is a school teacher, and in Canada, school teachers are revered and well paid.
Nice. That's the way it should be.
Absolutely. Look, the future of the planet belongs to our children. Let's educate them. So not being in a band was the best thing that happened. Not having to compete with two great songwriters. And the whole time we were making klaatu records, I was writing and recording demos in my house and, working away. And then the whole time I had my roofing business forever. I've had some sort of recording device for over 50 years. And I just putzed away at it. And I'm finally getting a handle on it. Finally getting the hang of it.
That's awesome. Well, after so many years, you start learning. How do you come up with all these different titles of some of these albums? I'm looking at some of the albums here, like Light Years Later, Stranded. I mean, a lot of these albums, I mean, they're just amazing. I mean, I know they are because I could see that In My Garden, which I think is that your newer one?
That was one of the most recent, about 3 albums ago. I actually put that out on vinyl as well as CD, and it's sort of a retrospective, a broad look at what I've done with a few new songs on it, just to keep it interesting. And I wouldn't call it a greatest hits, but the more accessible songs of mine and some personal favorites. It's a collection, a retrospective. Light Years Later, the title song from my first album, is in fact on In My Garden. In My Garden, I called it that because I wanted to pick a bouquet of flowers from my garden and present them to the audience. And I asked Ted Jones, my good friend who did all the Klaatu album covers, or most of them, and has done most of mine. We're still good buddies after all these years. I asked him if I could use a painting he had of the Garden of Eden that he'd been working on for a few years. And he said to me, he said, "No, you can't use that." I said, "Ted, you always let me." He says, "Yeah, but I'm not happy with that." He says, "Give me a couple months. I'm going to do a new one called In My Garden for you." So I said, "Really?" I said, "Okay." So I put the project on hold to some degree while he got his paints out and the new canvas and painted In My Garden. And it's beautiful. And matter of fact, Ted he moved down east, down to Nova Scotia about a year ago, just for a change of scenery, I guess. And he was going to put all of his paintings in storage, in some garage. So I said, "No, you're not doing that. Bring all the paintings to my house. I'll look after them for you." So all of his paintings are everywhere. Think of here's Stranded.
Oh yeah.
It just happens to be in this room.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That's really good. That's a good painting. I like
and
that.
And it's
Yeah.
like, it's about 4 feet by 4 feet.
Yeah.
You can't see it so well because I can't get far enough away from you.
It's huge. It's huge. I see. Yeah.
It is
cool.
Huge. So these are all over the place.
That is freaking amazing. So you use a lot of his artwork in your song.
Yeah, well, when I was working on the Stranded album in 2010, there was a whole bunch of songs that were about water or seafaring or whatever. One song is called "The Pirates of Port Royal,"
right?
And there's a few others. And so when I saw that painting Ted had of the ship stranded in the desert, and it's a flying ship on a purple planet with 3 moons or whatever, I said, "Ted, can I use this painting for my new album?" He says, "Sure." And so I sat down and wrote the song Stranded because of that picture, looking at that picture and talking about stranded on this remote planet. And I wrote these giant letters in the sand, Stranded, hoping that someone would see them as they flew by in their spaceship. I don't know. Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Like a good idea. Yeah. And I also seen something about a billboard you posted that somebody put that In My Garden on a billboard for you. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's he's this fellow named Steve. He owns an advertising company, and they have 2 digital billboards that they own. One is in Niagara Falls, and the other one's just outside Toronto, Mississauga. And he's a big fan, and I said, "Hey Terry, I got some billboards that I do advertising." He says, "Why don't you give me your album covers and we'll put them up on the billboard because I have downtime,
That's
free."
awesome.
Free. I said, so I called up Ted and said, "Hey Ted, these are the specs I need to put these things," and it's like a 4-panel. So and he mentioned my name and my URL, my website, and hot new CDs, Terry Draper, X klaatu, and then Ted's fabulous artwork is up there for the world to see. And
awesome.
I thought it was just great. The one in Niagara Falls is the better one too, because it's above a Hooters.
Yeah.
Somehow I find that appropriate.
It is appropriate because they're looking at. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I want to go back to some of the songs from klaatu, because a lot of that is who you guys were right at the time. And I'm going to jump back and forth. I don't want to confuse you. But one of the songs that I find that was intriguing was Howl at the Moon. Can you give me any insight on that song? That was a really, really good song.
Yeah, John wrote that one. I don't know much about that. I remember we made the demo of it in Dee's basement in 1978. And then it got chosen to go on the Endangered Species album. That was produced by Chris Bond.
Mm-hmm.
We had done 3 albums with Capitol, and Rupert Perry flew up to Toronto. He was the president of EMI at the time, EMI Capitol. And we had a meeting with him, and he said that, your career is not going that well. You came out of the gate really well with that first album, but we think that you need more to be controlled. And so he said, if you want to do a 4th album, and it was a 3-album deal, so the 4th album was an option. He says, if you want to do a 4th album, we want you to come to LA and we'll hire a producer. And we'd never done that before. We'd always had complete control with Jerry Brown over what we wanted to do. And we did anything we wanted to do. I mean, the Hope album is a space opera recorded with the London Philharmonic Orchestra at Olympic Studio in England. Quite grandiose, but it didn't sell records. So anyway, Capitol coerced us into coming there. They hired a band. So, John and Dee got to play on it. I didn't play drums on the record. I sat and watched. And I think Jeff Procaro and Ed Green. Anyway, so we aptly called that album Endangered Species, because that's what we were. The way we made music was now endangered. And Chris Bond picked the songs based on their radio access, I guess. And he picked Howl at the Moon and a couple of others.
Yeah, that's pretty much
not my favorite klaatu record.
Yeah, I know. But but that's how I got to know you guys. You see, if I didn't hear that record, that first record, I would have never known there was a second one before that and other things. I didn't know. I'm like an average fan. I start liking a band. I'll just take, for example, ELO. I started listening to them in 75. So I went and did some history, and I said, okay, I'll listen to the El Dorado album, which was, a lot of symphony orchestra, great album. And then I started following them with the music. And that's how I did with you guys. I started going upward and backward to find the songs and hear the different things that you guys were doing. And then I found your solo career from that. And of course, D Long's solo career from that. And I just want to touch on that. The music has brought me a lot of great sounds. It gave me influence. It's emotional. And it may not seem that way to you because when you just did the song, you just did the song. But I take these songs and I really do justice to them. I take Howl at the Moon. I play it for my Halloween playlist. I take, a lot of these songs like California Jam or Calling Occupants for the first album and put them on my Halloween playlist because it's, about aliens and stuff. You understand what I'm saying, right? There's like
absolutely. Yeah.
You guys got a lot of that going on. Like even with, I think it was the album Hope, where you did Around the Universe in 80 Days.
That's my favorite D song. Yeah.
Great song. And
I know it is.
It's really, really awesome. But a lot of that is geared towards aliens and just weird sounds. And I love stuff like that. And intricate sounds that are like I don't know, people that don't understand phasers, faders, different moog sounds, and just it just makes the music come alive, type of thing, because it's put at the right place at the right time, and you hear that, and I hear that in your music too.
We spend a lot of time getting it right, and the arrangements are quite dramatic in a lot of cases. And we spent a lot of time on that. We'd spend a couple of days working on a mellotron part for like Dr. Marvelo or something, and just to make sure that we had maximized everything that instrument could contribute to that song. It was, and in every case, it was all about the song. What does this song want to, it doesn't need a lot of drumming in this, just a little backbeat. Drums are in the back, not so loud. Don't play too much. Don't overplay, because they're not needed in the song like Routine Day or something. But in other songs, put the drums right up in your face, like Calling Occupants. So everything was groomed to fit the song, so that the song became more of itself, more of what it could be. George Martin had that kind of knack too, where you take a piece of music and manifest it to its make it as much as itself as it can. I don't know how else to explain it.
Well, you said you like Roy Orbison, and Roy Orbison was with the Traveling Wilburys, and I just have to go back to what Roy Orbison said. He said you can take a song and you can make it either great or not so great by adding too much or not enough. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always said that you can't kill a great song no matter what you do to it. And I think the Rolling Stones proved that in their early days. Some of those records they made are out of tune, out of time, poor playing, sloppy playing, but Time Is on My Side, Heart of Stone, doesn't matter how bad they played it, it's still great, So I've always maintained that you can't kill a great song. On the other hand, you can take a mediocre song and push it over the top, or a good song and make it fabulous.
Yeah.
It with the right arrangement and with the TLC.
So how do you, so when you go in the studio and you're making the music? I've talked to Pepe Castro about this. And Pepe was with the Blues Magoos in the '60s, and of course he was with Ballads in the '80s, and the Ballads didn't go anywhere. They only had a one-hit wonder, really, but they were not. They had an album and everything. The point is, how do you know when to stop? That's the hardest thing that you don't. I really can't grasp that.
I am so guilty of that. Adding the kitchen sink. Yeah. Somebody once said to me, this fellow Nick Blagona, he was an engineer and he worked with Deep Purple on the road. He was their sound man on the road, and he worked at Olympic as an engineer. This guy had been around the block, and he was mastering my first album. And there's a bit of prog rock on that first album, and he mentioned that to me as we were mastering it. And then he said to me, he says, I really like prog rock. He says, I've always believed that if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. And I've taken that to heart. It's hard to stop and pare things down. Often I'll get, or not often, but from time to time, I'll get someone else to mix one of my songs. Happened a couple of times on the last album, and they're not using all the bits. This is too much. It's in the way. And they're doing it. I end up liking their mix more than mine, which is difficult, because I spend a lot of time on those French horns.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure.
It's tough to know when to stop. And so I tend to give myself deadlines, not firm or anything, but it's like, what? Yeah, this new album, I'm going to release it in the fall. So I better have it all done by then. And so, otherwise you could spend your whole life working on on a record and adjusting it and changing it. But you know that 5 years you spend for an extra 5% increase in quality just isn't worth it. You know, it's a great quote from David Bowie. He said many years ago. He said that you get 25 years to make your first record. You got 6 months to make the second one.
In other words, narrow it down, like you're saying, and just go with what you've got rather than try to add too much to it to destroy
yeah. Try to. Well, the Hope album is a classic example of that because we were supposed to deliver it in June of 1977, and we had it finished, and we were unhappy with it. The London Symphony was just the parts they were playing weren't ornate enough. They were, you know, a backing sort of. We wanted more aggressive thing, but we ran out of time. And then luckily the first album, that Beatle rumor happened 7 months after it was released. And so Capitol pushed the release of Hope back to September. We went back into the studio and spent a whole month with synthesizers augmenting the orchestra and making it more spacey, I guess, is, you know, for lack of a better term.
Right.
The orchestral version of the Hope album, that's what we called it, the one that we finished and was about to deliver, we're about to deliver in June, appears on a klaatu greatest hits collection, just a retrospective called Sunset, and the entire orchestral Hope is on there, the early version. And it's quite interesting to hear the difference between the two, what another month in the studio can do.
And I relate a lot of your music not only to, and I'm just going to say the Moody Blues. I don't know if that was intentional, but a lot of the stuff with the strings sounds like string arrangements that the Moody Blues would do.
Yeah, myself in particular, the mellotron is still my favorite instrument. I use it excessively, too much, I think, because most people, you know, aren't listening to it anymore. But I just like it a lot. The flutes and the strings. Genesis used it a lot too. Washer in the Skies, that whole opening with the mellotron. Yeah, so Moody Blues were a big influence on me. I remember, I was still a teenager, and I remember lining up at Sam the Record Man, the big record store in Canada, at the head office downtown, or the head store at Yonge and Dundas, to get my copy of On the Threshold of a Dream the day it was released.
What an album.
What a great record. Yeah. And, you know, back in those days, Gene, I had come home with my record, and a few buddies would come over, a half a dozen of us, and we'd sit down and listen to this new album, no talking. And we'd listen to it multiple times.
Right.
You remember?
Yeah.
And it was just like, nobody would speak. God forbid, you get smacked. And we just reveled in the music. It was the center of our lives. And today with the kids, I think that the music is a backdrop for the video game they're playing, you know. And when they say video killed the radio star, it's really true. It really is. I think much music really ruined a lot of the music business. People are spending more time watching Beyonce's ass than they are listening to her music. Sorry, I hate to be crass, but
no, but you're right, Terry. You're absolutely right. I
crassness begets crassness.
No, you're 100% right. And you're not giving it from the profile of an older man. You're giving it from a profile of a musician that sees what's happening to the music industry, and you're also trying to understand why. And that's what I'm trying to understand. Why? Because music is all around us. It's part of our lives. But when we let it destroy the very fact that we enjoy it or want to hear great stuff, it really destroys the fabric of music altogether. And we don't want to do that. I'm not trying to do
you know what, Gene? It's not their fault. The people that are making music today, that what's her name, Taylor Swift and Katy Perry, or whoever you want to mention, it's not their fault that their music is substandard. And let me qualify that by saying that you and I lived through a musical renaissance that was not unlike Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci in the 1500s.
Right.
That's what happened in the 60s. The Beatles led this wave of creativity. You look at the Billboard Top 100 from 1967, and every song, everybody's trying to sound different. Everybody wants to be unique. Songs like Mellow Yellow by Donovan and Strawberry Fields Forever. And everybody's doing something different. Even the pop guys, the Association, are writing songs like Cherish and Never My Love. And it was just everyone was trying so hard and being so creative. And it was a renaissance. That's, you know, and that's tough to live up to, you know. I can remember listening to the Elton John records when he became really great, and you know, I was a big fan. I thought his music was quite good. Wasn't the Beatles, it wasn't the '60s, but it was okay until he started wearing the boa and the glasses and the thing, and the shtick became more important than the music, and then I sort of see you later, Elton. You know, I can afford to be very choosy, by the way. You know. I grew up in the '60s.
You're 100% correct. I mean, because I was just talking to, like I said, Pepe Castro, and we were talking about some things like the Doors, and Ray Manzarek on the keyboard, how he got from, I think it was Riders in the Storm, and he pulled it from Ghost Riders in the Sky, and I'm like, that is so freaking awesome how he created that keyboard, you know, sequence up and down, scale back and forth, but created that song from Ghost Riders in the Sky. And I'm like, that was just unbelievable.
Inspiration comes from the strangest places, you know. On my new album, there's a song called The Sultan's Dream. And I was watching this Netflix program about the rise of civilizations. And this one particular episode was about the Ottoman Empire and the fall of Constantinople. And I'm listening to it, and when it was over, I went and did some research and found some Turkish war music. And then I recreated it myself with the drums and the horns, and then wrote this song about the Sultan's dream, which was to conquer Constantinople and call it Istanbul. And that's what the whole song's about. And I use the idiom of their music, that Eastern style of music. And it was fun for me, you know, and it was an exploration, was a learning experience. Mm-hmm. And my philosophy of making music is that if I can amuse myself, there's a good chance I can amuse you too. So inspiration comes from the strangest places sometimes.
And you know what's funny about that song, going back to that song, he said he did it right in the studio. You know, he had the immediate thought to think about that and let's say, let me variation of that song and put it to that song. And Jim loved it. Jim loved it, and the rest of the band loved it. So listen, when you talk about 60s bands, you got to include all the bands that had one hits, because when I talk to these guys that had one hits, they're like, dude, we had more than one hit. It's just that the record company, the radio station, and management let us only have that one hit out. We had albums, we had 45s. So you know what I'm talking about. It was very hard in the 60s for bands to even get out there, let alone with the Monkees and the Beatles, what they were doing. I mean, you know, the Beatles were taking over everything.
A lot of competition.
What's that?
A lot of competition.
And great artists, great music artists that carried on into the 70s and into the 80s, and some all today, like you. We're going to go over some of your albums here, because some of these albums, like Terry's Tunes, can you elaborate a little bit about that?
When I have two sons, And I guess back in the mid 90s, they were like 8 and 10 years old. And I decided to write an album of songs for them. So it's children's music, but it's not like the Barney the dinosaur. It's very sophisticated children's music. It sounds like Yellow Submarine,
Oh, nice.
which is a children's song, right? So there's a song on it, and it's all about self-esteem and confidence building. So there's one song on it called "Blast Off," and it's all aboard my rocket ship, and we zoom off to Zygonia, meet the Zygonians, and have a nice time. But then we get back on the rocket ship and go home because there's no place like home. Simple messages like that, reach for the sky. There's another song called "How High Can You Count?" And, I got my sons to sing on it, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. How high can you count? It was a lot of fun to do it. And, I wrote them for my children to enjoy. And other people have bought it for their kids. That was done in 2000 was when I released the Terry Tunes CD. Originally, it was a 7-song cassette called Terry and the Pirates. From the old cartoon.
Yeah. I was just going to say that's probably related to the cartoon. Now, as a dad, as you're taking care of your kids growing up, I mean, obviously you got a musically inclined because they're on the album. That's great. What were they listening to, and did you say, okay, well, here's something Dad can do better?
No, I didn't step on their toes too much. I remember my wife confiscated a Guns N' Roses cassette from them because of the language. And then a couple of years later, Eminem is out there. Give me a break. Anyway, I know that the record label that Klaatu was with re-releasing CDs and stuff in Canada was called Attic Records. And one of the artists that they had for distribution in Canada was Weird Al. So whenever I was at the office, I would grab the latest Weird Al CD or cassette and bring it home. My kids love that stuff. Living in the Fridge, what a great song. So yeah, they were listening to their own thing. And my younger son is a very good drummer, way better than I ever was. He lives in Australia now and still plays the drums. Oh, cool. And he was right into the Red Hot Chili Peppers. That was one of the things that really turned his crank. My other son likes techno pop, or so I don't know what, when you get the DJ out there and it's a rave or something, and the bass makes you want to go to the bathroom. I don't get it, but.
You're funny, Terry. You're funny. So let's talk about some of your albums, your other albums, like Area 52. That sounds like a space album. Is that?
Yeah, no, actually, that's an interesting album because I only had a couple of albums out at the time, and this record label in Japan approached us and wanted us to put together a compilation of my first 3 albums and release it in Japan, and they gave us $1,000 to do it. So put together this thing, and I had to come up with a name for it. And I thought I would, Area 51. Well, you know what's in Area 50. Imagine what's in Area 52. But I changed area to aria to make it a musical connection.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch. So that's just a best of with a couple of the best of. I only had 3 records out at the time, and one of them was live. Yikes. I can't listen to that one. Not a big fan of live. No control, people playing wrong notes. Boy, I really, I sometimes miss being in a band, but not very often. I do it all myself, and I get it right.
So what do you do to pass the time now? You say you're still a roofer in Canada. You do that?
No, I retired roofing 30 years ago. That's a young man's job. Jesus.
It is. But I see older guys do it. People that have to have money.
I stopped roofing and started doing decks and fences, and then I got moved inside and started doing hardwood flooring and trimming out stuff. And last summer just gone by, I decided that I was going to have no more carpet in our house. I ripped all the carpet out of the house and put in all new hardwood floors. A nice maple floor downstairs and a dark oak upstairs. So there's no carpet in our house anymore. It's all hardwood or ceramic.
So your allergies are going away. You don't have no more.
Yeah, I don't have that problem, but yeah, the carpets are terrible for that.
Oh, they keep it in there. Yeah. So you actually you're a rounded musician. You've been everywhere. You've done everything. Now who did you meet on the road when you were on the road?
Oh, we were only toured in Canada. We never left Canada, so we didn't meet a lot of people. But we did meet some people when we were in LA recording the Endangered Species album. We lived there for 3 months, and I had a ball. We were taking singing lessons, the three of us. Chris Bond found us this woman that young girl that taught singing lessons. So we took lessons I ended up dating her. And she showed me all around and took me to Venice, and we went to these little nightclubs and hung out, and I just had a great time for 3 months living down there. Cool. But because we had a band recording our album, we had a lot of downtime, John and Dee and I. And not only that, but we recorded the album Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, like bankers. and we'd always made our records in the middle of the night, with no lights on except for the equipment. So we're like in the cockpit of a spaceship making these records. And now here we are working in daylight, 9 to 5, like bankers. Anyway, we spent a lot of time in the lounge playing ping pong and pinball. And one day we were in there playing pinball, John and Dee and I, and the studio manager was giving Dolly Parton a tour of the building and the facility. She was going to book some time and record there. I think it was called Sound Lab, the studio we were at. Anyway, we get introduced to Dolly, and she says, and I quote, "Can I play with y'all?" And so we played a round of pinball with Dolly on the Dolly Parton pinball machine.
That's amazing.
It is. You can't make stuff like that up. And I'm looking, she's playing, and she fished a quarter out, and we all put our quarters in, and she's playing away, and I'm looking at John and Dee, and it's like, we're playing with Dolly on her own machine here, and we're putting our money in, and she's getting a piece of the action.
That's freaking amazing. I want to share some of the albums with their people watching over there so they could see. Lost. Is that the newest one, Lost?
Lost is the most recent of the albums. It came out in December, and Lost is the opening song and the title track. And it's not a negative thing being lost in my world. I look at Anna all the time and say to her when we're traveling, I love to look at her and say, we've never been on this road before. And so this song is all about being lost and looking beyond the next border, being lost and looking, but not over my shoulder. I'm always going forward and exploring. And that sort of leads the album through this ride, exploring different things.
You got tons of albums on here. So like you were talking about Sunset on Mars.
That was released a year ago, January.
Okay. So we got to get caught up on all these. So how do I get these CDs? How do I get them, Terry? Do I just go there and grab them and you'll autograph them and send them?
TerryDraper.com, absolutely.
Okay, just want everybody to know how to get them. And
back up there for a second, Gene. Back up there. Stop there. You see the postcard with the little guitar?
Yeah. Window on the World.
I put out 3 albums like that because when you manufacture CDs, you have to manufacture like 1,000. Mm-hmm. And then I only end up selling half of them, maybe 600. Anyway, The point is I got a basement full of CDs.
Okay.
And so I decided to try something different. So when you order the album Window on the World, what you receive is a little postcard that tells you who played on it, what songs are on it, et cetera, et cetera. And then you get that little guitar, which is a USB stick.
Oh, that's really cool.
And on the USB stick is the 15 or 20 songs, plus a digital booklet that I make myself. My son taught me how to use Photoshop. So I just go and steal stuff from the internet and put my lyrics over top of it so that it matches the mood of the song or the subject matter. And so each song gets 2 pages in the booklet. And it's a 40-page digital booklet that comes up on your video screen. And then any videos that I've made are also on that USB stick.
Oh,
The last 2 albums, I've had a video made for every song. This friend of mine in Ontario here, Jamie Grant, has offered to make me a few videos. He's done every song on the last 2 albums. There's 30 videos he's done in the last year and a half. And that's really fun. I let him do pretty much whatever he likes to. Anyway, I did 3 albums like that, and I found that it was not a good response. I thought it would go better, but I think the demographic is, people that like what I do and buy my music are over 50, and they want to hold something in their hand, not a USB stick.
I love what you do. I got to be a fan of the CD itself, but I got to have time to rip them. And in my situation, if I can get the song instantly like that in USB, I mean, I'll send you all the donations for whatever if you can send me the music. That's all I want.
Well, I have people that buy the CD on my website.
Right.
I send them the download as well.
Oh yeah, do that. That's great.
And the download contains all the songs, the digital booklet, and all the videos.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And that's the way I send out the, for press and stuff like that. I send them, it's a link, and you just grab it and download it, and everything there, the whole album's there with the videos and all the info you could possibly want.
Wow, that's awesome. So that's on terrydraper.com.
terrydraper.com, yeah.
And at the same time, we're trying to appease everybody here because I want to sell. Listen, I want to help sell these CDs. I mean, you have let's say this: if one person bought every CD on your thing, which is the kids' CDs and everything, could you give them a special deal?
Sure.
Let them know.
I haven't thought about it, but record sales just aren't that great these days.
I know.
Of course, I'm not a fan of Spotify or any of these streaming services. It's just I can't imagine how young kids today are making a living in the music business. I know it was a struggle for us, and we never saw any money to speak of. And we got gold records in Canada and Australia, our records were very expensive to make because it took a lot of time. It's a long, slow process. We didn't have a band; there was just 3 of us. So I don't know how the kids are doing it today, but the only real money we saw was from the Carpenters' recording of "Calling Occupants."
Isn't that's crazy? I mean, if they didn't do that,
and that money still rolls in, still does okay.
And what attracted Karen and Richard to that song? Was it just the way the song was done? Do you think?
I was told Frank Davies owned Daffodil Records that we were signed to in Canada. He was like our mentor. We go to him. I still talk to him from time to time. He started the Canadian Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame, and our song "Calling Occupants" was inducted into it 2 years ago. And it was a big hoopla in Toronto and a nice evening. But he met with the Carpenters, and they were gushing over the first klaatu album and singing him all the bits from it. apparently their guitar player, Tony Pelosi, had brought it to their attention, and they decided to record Calling Occupants. I think they did a great job. And they gave Tony at the outro, we use horns to do the da dee da dee da dee da dee da, and they gave it to him to wail out on, like the first time they did that. There's a great story about them recording one of Richard's songs, and it escapes me. But they asked Tony to play a guitar solo. And he started, playing this nice guitar.
Oh, I know that buzz guitar in that song.
Yeah, and Richard said, no, I want like over the top, like, give me the fuzz and the echo and wail. I wanted screaming. And they invented the power ballad at that moment in time, and everybody does it now. It's common, but then it was, Jesus, I can't remember the song.
I know which one you're talking about, and I know all the Carpenter songs. I just can't think. Oh God!
It'll come to me later this afternoon, and I'll call you.
It's hurting someone, maybe. I don't know. I can't remember.
Oh yeah, that's
hurting each other.
Yep. Why don't we stop hurting each other? Gotta stop loving each other. Like, yeah, that's it. That's the one.
And then you're right. The guitar comes in near the end, but it also is like you're like listening to all these harmonies and you're hearing this what?
Yeah. It's just wailing. Yeah. There's Richard was quoted once as saying that he believes in the 3 Bs, and that was the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and Bacharach. So it's not surprising that they were much taken with the first Klaatu album, which is very Beatlesque. And it's full of rich harmonies and good melodies. Each one of those songs is a well-crafted little pop tune if you strip away all of the icing. But don't strip away the icing, because that's my favorite part. Even when I'm doing my own stuff, Gene, it's nice to sit at the piano with a blank piece of paper, and then an hour later, or sometimes days later, there's something there that didn't exist before. And that's a special kind of thing. But when I take that downstairs and start playing the piano and doing the bass lines and then getting out the mellotron and the Hammond organ, putting some strings on it, doing the icing is my favorite part. Everybody likes icing,
Yeah. Well, let me talk about a little bit more songs now. A Perpetual Motion Machine, one of my another favorites. I don't know where that song came from. It's just like,
nor do I. That's one of Dee's.
What the hell is this? But it's a great song.
Yeah, Dee was living on another planet for quite a while back in those days, and he used to come up with some strange ideas and just like around the universe in 80 days. What a great idea for a song. I mean, it's just I like the movie and the book by Jules Verne, and Dee took it a step further. Brilliant. But Perpetual Motion Machine was on our 3rd album called Sir Army Suit. Right. And we consciously tried to get some airplay with that album. Songs like Dear Christine and Perpetual Motion Machine. Right. Everybody Took a Holiday. They're all like, 3.5 minutes long. Catchy little numbers, not overly produced. Like Dear Christine is about a guy that gets what did they call that when they would hijack you and put you on a ship in the 1800s?
That's what I got from that song, an 1800 song, because it sounds like back then.
Yeah, well, this guy gets shanghaied onto a ship, and then in Bournemouth, leaving England, and he writes Dear Christine a letter that he misses her and the whole thing. And I wanted to start the song off with the sound of waves and the seagulls in the harbor. And they wouldn't let me.
Oh, wow.
No, they wanted John and Dee and Terry all wanted this album to be commercial, radio friendly. No sound effects, no bullshit. Let's try to make some songs and make some money, sell some records.
Right.
It's a tough business. We made the first album, and we had complete artistic control, did whatever we felt like, and people liked it. But then we were now part of the business, and we had deadlines, and we had to eat, because I couldn't go roofing anymore. I was in the studio, and although I did do some roofing because I needed some extra cash, but nonetheless, we became part of the machine, and
Right.
now the machine, you gotta play the game. And so that's what we tried to do. It wasn't that successful. Routine Day did okay.
Now, there's a bunch of songs. I gotta say, Tokyo Marfield is great.
Yeah.
I also love.
I always heard Frank Sinatra singing that song. Feel the sun upon my face.
I love that song. And there's so many. Silly Boys. I think that sounds more like Pink Floyd. Was that intended?
Absolutely.
I thought so.
It was
That's
back
great
in the 60s. We used to listen to records backwards. The famous Revolution #9 on the White Album. You turn it over and listen to it backwards. You had to flip the tape. You had to record it to tape, flip the tape over, and listen backwards. We don't have that luxury anymore. It's hard to listen to stuff backwards. But when you listen to Revolution #9 backwards, you would hear the fire and the car accident and Paul yelling, get me out, and stuff like that, Oh, boy. Anyway, so John had listened to Dee's song, Anus of Uranus, backwards, and heard all these words. So we wrote all the words down, and this was during the first album, and then we just filed it away. And then we were doing this record of pop tunes on Sir Army Suit, our third album, and we wanted to close the album with something a little off the wall. So John says, let's look at this, Anus of Uranus, backwards. And we called it Silly Boys because that was what we were being. And so we kept the lyric, the actual vocal, and redid everything else, turned the vocal backwards. So when I played the drums to it, I was hearing the backwards drums, and the backwards. It was just so weird trying to listen to it.
To get the beat from the beat with the beat, right?
Yeah. But anyway, once we got the drums down and some guitars down, we took away all the background, all the music that was backwards, except the vocal. So when you hear Silly Boys, and the voice sounds kind of weird and spacey, kind of like a vocoder, but if you take Silly Boys and reverse it and listen to it, you'll hear all these backwards instruments. And then Dee comes up and sings, late last night while wishing on a star. Just the lyric from the vocal from Anus of Uranus.
Yeah.
And it is so weird to hear it like that. It's just, and the lyrics kind of make sense backwards. Anyway, we had a lot of fun with that one.
Oh, that's so cool.
And if you have the LP and you pull out the sleeve inside with the lyrics on it, you'll see that Silly Boys is a mirror image of the lyric. In order to read the lyrics, you have to hold it up to a mirror because it's backwards.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. See, I got the CDs.
One of those little clues. We had so much fun in klaatu doing that kind of stuff. There's layers and layers of fun. I can't describe it better. Here's one for you. There's a song on the Hope album called Polizania.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, and so every time we transition from the verses with the orchestra and John talking, the professor telling the story of the Polizanians, whenever we go to the chorus, which is like a heavy rock band, or as heavy as we could be, I suggested to John and Dee that I wanted to use this rhythm, a drum rhythm, every time, and the drum rhythm was da 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 da, and I wanted them to play like an ambulance, da 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 da. And that rhythm, da, 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 you know what that is?
No.
SOS. Dot, 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 dash,
Oh,
dash.
yeah. Got it. Yeah. Morse code, right? Yeah.
So every time we go to the chorus and start screaming Polysania, we play the SOS, send help.
Oh, cool.
And when I explained it to John and Dee what I was trying to do here, they just thought it was, oh, that's the cat's ass. Let's do this. This is fun. That's fun. And nobody gets it. Nobody's ever called me up and say, hey, you decided to do SOS or Morse code. That's pretty cool.
I never picked that up.
I did it for me. We did it for us. And we used to have this we talk about all the time when we were doing something clever and fun like that. It was for that one fan we had who listened with headphones on LSD.
That's great. That's
so there was that one guy out
love
there on LSD listening with headphones, and we were doing that for him. Stuff like that.
Yeah, because you can hear it through the cross of the speakers, and it fades in and out, and it's just, oh my God, it's such a, I mean, it's a head trip. You're not doing drugs, it's a head trip. It really is. A lot of the albums are like that, but I do want to say, Terry, before we go, we're getting ready to go. Again, how can anybody get your music? TerryDraper.com, right?
Yeah, and I'm also in America. I'm distributed by a large distribution company called MVD. And so it's in the stores. My stuff is in some of the record stores. I guess some of the bigger ones, I'm not sure. But they send me checks, so I guess they're selling CDs somewhere.
I've never seen your stuff here. I've seen old klaatu stuff here, a new klaatu stuff, and then that's it. And then everything else is on the internet, of course. But I'm in New Jersey.
TerryDraper.com.
TerryDraper.com. And you're going to be working on any new things, any new books or new stuff coming up?
I've got a new album almost finished. One of the songs that I'm really excited about is a prog rock kind of number. It starts off with harp in 3/4 time, so it's like a English drawing room Baroque kind of music. And then it twists into this Mellotron-y thing, and like King Crimson. And it's all about the song is called The Colonel, and it's the story of Percy Fawcett, Colonel Percy Fawcett, who disappeared in the Amazon in 1925, never to be heard from again, whilst looking for the lost city of Z.
Where do you get your inspiration from? I mean,
I love history. I love history.
You seem like you do. Like all your stuff is history. Civil War, this, that. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff.
It's, well, wherever inspiration comes from, I get an idea like that, and then I try to make the music fit what the story's about. So it starts off with the sounds of the Amazon jungle, and it's at the end of it, I have this fellow that does voices. He does voiceovers for a living, and he can do all different kind of voices. On my last album, he did a young Winston Churchill for a song called "The Sun Never Sets on the British Empire." I was going to sing the verses, but it wasn't working, so I got him to recite them. And it's "The sun never sets on the British Empire." And it just sounds great with the thing. And then the chorus comes and it's a little rock band, sounds like the Hollies, Anyway, at the end of this new song, The Colonel, I found these great quotes from Percy Fawcett himself. And I got this friend of mine to recite them in an aristocratic British voice. And then I put it through like a telephone. So it sounds like it's a poor recording from 1930.
Right.
And that's how the song ends, with him talking about his mission, and he hopes to find the city, an ancient civilization in the middle of Amazonia. And so, that's going to be on the new album. That's one of my favorites so far.
I can't wait to hear it. So make sure you give me that. I'm gonna purchase all the CDs. I just want to ask you, could you do me a favor? Could you do a sweeper for the station?
Sure.
Just whatever you want to say. I'm Terry Draper, and you're listening to Hamilton Radio. That's it.
That's it? Hamilton Radio?
Hamilton Radio, yeah. 25 years. It'll be 26 years or 25 years going in June 8th, this coming year.
Should I brush my hair first?
No, you're fine.
I'm fine.
And I want permission. I want permission also to play your videos on the Roku channel when I get them.
Knock yourself out. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. Okay. Hello out there. This is Terry Draper from Klaatu, the mystery band, and we're listening to Hamilton Radio. That's a DJ kind of thing, eh?
That's fine.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much, Terry. It's been a pleasure. I hope, when your album comes out, you send that to me. We can get that, start playing that for you. Get some, people. I know a lot of movie producers, and they're always looking for backing tracks. And I know they have residuals because we've got a lot of people doing them. So if I can do anything to implement that, to make that happen for you, I will.
We'll talk after this is over. I'll send you some stuff, and I make music for the movies.
I know.
Each song I do is its own movie. I try to. I never write music without having an idea or some lyric, because it's pointless. I got pages of chords and melodies that don't go anywhere. But if I know what I'm singing about, then I know how to write music that sounds like what I'm talking about. I want them to be married together, the music and the lyric. And so the stuff, because I use a lot of sound effects too. My song Civil War Not Very, that's on the Civil War album, it's full of sound effects of cannons and stuff, and I stole most of them from the movie Gettysburg.
Oh, cool. Okay. I thank you, Terry. What a pleasure to talk to you.
We'll talk, my friend.
We'll talk. Thank you.
Cheers.